In her book, The ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors, psychiatrist Dr. Frances Cress Welsing states, the concurrent urban crises of drug use, drug addiction, drug-related murder, teenage pregnancy, infant mortality, black academic underachievement, black teenage unemployment, black adult male unemployment, black male incarceration, single-parent, female-headed households, chronic welfare dependency, poverty, AIDS, and homelessness are very disturbing individual and group-destructive pathological forms of behavior that are the direct and indirect byproducts of a behavioral power system fundamentally structured for white genetic survival, locally and globally. The chain of events begins with the denial of full-scale employment and advancement to black males so that they cannot adequately support themselves, their wives, and their children. In turn, large numbers of black male children grow up without father's guidance. This leads to frustration, depression, and failure in school. Once this atmosphere is established, drugs are placed deliberately in the black community. The drugs are then used to street treat black male frustration and depression. The high prices for which drugs are sold provide the black male population with the illusion that finally they are beginning to make some money and to share in the American dream. Guns are then placed at the disposal of the same black male persons, supposedly to aid them in enforcing payment for drug sales. More important, the strategy is for black males to kill and destroy one another and then carry the blame. It must be realized that no black males manufacture the chemicals for drug use, nor do any black males manufacture guns.
But for many, the wounds are always open. Perhaps most important, its influence radiating to every part of life is the breakdown of the Negro family structure. For this, most of all, white America must accept responsibility. It flows from centuries of oppression and persecution of the Negro man. It flows from the long years of degradation and discrimination which have attacked his dignity and assaulted his ability to produce for his family. This, too, is not pleasant to look upon. But it must be faced by those whose serious intent is to improve the life of all Americans. Only a minority, less than half, of all Negro children reach the age of 18 having lived all their lives with both of their parents. At this moment tonight, little less than 2/3 are at home with both of their parents. Probably a majority of all Negro children receive federally aided public assistance sometime during their childhood. The family is the cornerstone of our society. More than any other force, it shapes the attitude, the hopes, the ambitions, and the values of the child. And when the family collapses, it is the children that are usually damaged. When it happens on a massive scale, the entire community itself is crippled. So unless we work to strengthen the family, to create conditions under which most parents will stay together, all the rest, schools and playgrounds and public assistance and private concern, will never be enough to cut completely the circle of despair and deprivation.
George White, the man who helped the agency in so many of its programs. He would retire here to Stinson Beach, California. And shortly before his death, He wrote to his boss at the CIA, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and summed up his career by saying, "It was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, and cheat, steal, deceive, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest?"
In the CIA, we didn't give a hoot about democracy. I mean, it was fine if a government was elected and would cooperate with us, but if it didn't, then democracy didn't mean a thing to us. And I don't think it means a thing today. The true goal of the United States government is control.
The CIA does not care about human life. It doesn't care about peace at all. It cares about winning and perpetuating and expanding itself, and that's not an exaggeration. They have an entire procedure they've developed over the last 40 years since Gary Webb. They destroyed his career, lost his marriage, his finances, and then wound up in a hotel room with 2 bullets in his head because he reported on CIA drug running, and he wrote the book Dark Alliance. Their most favorite form of assassination is pushing someone to suicide, and then that gives them the doctrine of plausible deniability. And that comes from National Security Council Directive 10-2 in 1948, where the CIA can do anything it wants: sabotage, subversion, economic warfare, assassination. It can do anything it wants as long as there's plausible denial for the U.S. government. They can deny any involvement. The CIA can do anything it wants. Now imagine that. With their $39 billion plus budget and the power of secrecy they have, the things that they have done and are doing are unconscionable.
The Tyrone Mays rat experiment. He ended up getting it from another psychiatrist in 1840. They took a few hundred rats, right? And they splitted them and they divided them. And what they did was they created an environment for both of these rats to live in. In one subject, they took about 100 rats and they put it in an environment where it had clean water. They put it in an environment where it had the right amount of space for the rats can, basically, if they wanted to be by themselves, they could. They made sure that it was good food in there that didn't have any type of poisons put inside the foods. They even gave them space to breathe, to go upstairs, downstairs. They just gave them this abundant environment, right? They put these rats in there. Mind you, these the same rats with the same genetical molecular structure, which is nothing different. They both came from the same mama, the same daddy, the same family tree, right? Then they put the other 100 rats in a bad environment where they didn't get water. If they did get water, the water actually had acids in it. They made sure they didn't give them the regular food. I think they gave them like cat food or something like that with a bunch of pellets that was inside of them, right? They stuck them on top of each other and they made sure that the space was very, very small. They never cleaned any poop out of the maze. They pissed out of the maze and they left them in there. They left them in there for 4 months and they watched how their behavior changed. They went back and they got the actual rats that came from the good environment and they put them in the maze. They ended up going through the maze very, very fast. Then they ended up going to get the rats that they put in the bad environment and put them in the maze, and they didn't know how to even make it through the first section of the maze. So he like, maybe this is a coincidence. So he did it. So what he did was he switched the rats. He took the rats that was smart, that made it through the maze, that was in the good environment, and he put them in the bad environment. Then he took the rats that was in the bad environment, that was dummies that couldn't make it through the maze at all, and he put them in the good environment. He waited 4 months, then he took them back out. The same rats that was good and smart, that was in a good environment, that he put in a bad environment, now they couldn't make it through the maze. The same rats that was in the bad environments, that was dummies that couldn't make it through the maze, he put them in a good environment. Now they making it through the maze and making it through life just fine. So he said, damn, it ain't the genetics, it's the community. It's the environment that you put these biological entities in that changes the way they interact with their environment and with themselves. Did you know he did another 6-month experiment on the same rats that he left in the bad environment? Guess what they started doing? Killing each other. Some of the male rats started humping other male rats. Homosexuality. Look, the other rats that was at the bottom that didn't have the food, these went upstairs to the other rats and started robbing them for food and water. I said, damn, this sound like your typical project. Don't this sound like the PJs? This is a real rat experiment. So it made me start questioning. I had to sit back and really rub my chin.
So they turned into robbing rats?
They turned into robbing, homosexual.
What else are you gonna do?
Rats.
It's a survival mechanism at this point.
Now check this out though, guys. It was a selective group of female rats, and I really want y'all to look this up when y'all get home today. Watch this. It will f your mind up. The female rats, they started pampering themselves. They used to let their children just do whatever.
Get your kids. Get your children. Get your children. Get your children.
All they was worried about.
Hood rats. Which one these is?
See, these was the hood rats.
Okay.
The hood rats, right? Exactly. So the hood rats. I'm gonna quote that. The hood rats. All they did was pamper themselves. The only thing that they worried about was their fur. They worried about their weight. The only thing that they focused on was their actual cells. And then the father rats started going to other different parts of the actual rat experiment cage and started like bullying on the younger children. It was crazy, man. Look, it gets so deep when you really start watching it. It even rapists started happening. Rape with the older male rats in the community started raping the younger males and the younger female rats. Same thing that happens in the ghetto where a young girl will get touched on by their uncle, or a young male will get touched on by their uncle or their auntie.
With a team, he began feverishly designing and constructing habitats, sometimes referred to as universes, where he performed numerous smaller-scale and more controlled versions of his original rat study on a domesticated strain of albino Norway rat. These rats would want for nothing. All physical needs for a healthy rat lifestyle would be provided for them, including food, water, climate control, and nesting material. The design of these habitats was simple. The layout was a rectangle measuring 10 feet by 14 feet, divided into 4 equal sections by electric fences. 3 of these fences sported bridges over which the rats could climb, while one fence lacked such a bridge. He enticed the rats to use one of the center pens by making the spiral staircase to that pen's living spaces shorter than the others, though he admits this was a comparatively small factor. But the more insidious change was to their food supply. In half of the experiments, Calhoun supplied powdered food, but in the other half he placed feeders of his own design, consisting of hard pellets behind a wire mesh. Almost immediately after introduction, things began to go awry. The females, unsurprisingly, spread themselves out somewhat evenly through the pens, but after the males jockeyed for dominance and those of highest rank were determined, they began to distribute themselves strangely. Less dominant male rats will typically awaken earlier and begin to wander and forage for food, and due to the design of the pen, this meant that they usually would end up in the center sections to eat. During this time, the dominant males of the outer pens would wake up and begin guarding their respective territories. These few remaining males began exhibiting odd behavior. Though they would spend most of their time in the burrows with the females, hiding away from the dominant male, they would never attempt to mate with any of them. Instead, perplexingly, they would try to mate with the dominant male, and even more perplexing, the dominant male would not fight these attempts. He called a behavioral sink, or an increase in pathological activity in the rats due to the stress involved in such high population density. For the females, the behavioral sink manifested in reduced capacity for nest building and young rearing.
This happened. So it's like, damn, is this rat experiment that's going on in Tyrone rat maze experiments the same that's going on with us in these communities? And then you have to ask yourself, in the projects. Right. And who built these communities? We didn't build these communities.
You know, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us.
You must disperse immediately. This is no longer a peaceful protest when you try to injure people. You must disperse now.
Former domestic policy chief John Ehrlichman said, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had 2 enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or blacks, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did." Secondly, in 1969, President Richard Nixon stated, "You have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appearing to." Lastly, in 1970, a sociologist and advisor to President Nixon, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, wrote, "The time may have come when the issue of race could benefit from a period of benign neglect. The subject has been too much talked about. The forum has been too much taken over to hysterics, paranoids, and boodlers on all sides. We may need a period in which Negro progress continues and racial rhetoric fades. Greater attention to Indians, Mexican Americans, and Puerto Ricans would be useful. A tendency to ignore provocations from groups such as the Black Panthers might also be useful. In other words, these three quotes, as well as other corroborating information by government officials, shows that white supremacists, particularly the highest officials of the U.S. government, declared war on the black collective, especially the black family, and that war has not stopped, as the war now operates in a covert way.
Clorinda relies on welfare to support Shaquana, but it's her mother, Gloria Henderson, who gets the check for the whole family. Gloria, 34, has never been married. She was a teenager when Clorinda was born, just as her own mother, Clorinda's grandmother, had been when Gloria was born.
When you were pregnant, did you assume that you could turn to welfare for help after the baby came?
Well, yeah, but I didn't have her just to collect welfare. I had her because I felt that it would have been a part of me. I would have had somebody to live for and also somebody to love and love me back.
Is your daughter the first person you've ever loved?
I really, really love my daughter.
2 months after the birth of their baby, Clorinda was pregnant again by Darren. This time she had an abortion. She didn't think she could handle 2 little children while still a teenager herself.
Your grandmother was a single woman with a child. Your mother, a single woman with a child. Now you. Why is that happening?
I really didn't plan on getting pregnant, but if I really had somebody to really sit down and talk to, like really express my feelings to them, I don't think none of this would have happened. And then when it did happen, my grandma's like, I told you this, I told you this, tell me nothing.
Nobody told Darren anything either. He too lives at home with his mother. Where's your father?
Locked up.
Locked up where?
Green Street.
What for?
Fighting and shit. Fighting. Violence. Stuff like that.
Had anybody ever told you what it is like to be a father?
I like watching other older, that had
kids. What did you learn from it? How did you?
I learned that they take a lot of patience. Take a lot of patience.
You have a lot of patience?
I don't got a lot of patience.
Clorinda doesn't always have a lot of patience either.
You want to fight? No. Then don't ask me if I want to fight. If you don't want to fight. Don't say to me.
You got my course then.
Come in now.
Talk to you. You like going out like that.
No, you went out. You shouldn't have said nothing to me. You done already pissed me off.
What I do?
2 months after her abortion, Clorinda and Darren broke off their relationship. They see each other rarely now. Once in a while, Clorinda will take Shaquana to visit. Do you ever think about marrying Clorinda? Why not?
I ain't thinking about that. Nah, that's the last thing on my mind.
You ever feel depressed?
I don't be like sad. I just be like frustrated. I be like really like frustrated.
What are the odds that your daughter will follow the same route? Because there was your grandmother.
No.
You hate your daddy, you hate your uncle because he wasn't there. Y'all didn't have no dad in the house. Y'all don't know what no man is because boys done raise boys. How you gonna know what a man is? And from 83 to now, boys been raising boys. They don't know what no man is, and half of them wind up being somebody. Because they're in the house with mama, but they're not feminine. They just happen to be in the house with mama. Ain't no man been there, so how they know how to be a man? Right today, I'm 77 years old and finna leave planet Earth, and I can't tell you what no man is.
Psychological programming of self-hatred comes from a white supremacist psychological program to cause us to self-destruct. We can't kill you because y'all don't know who y'all are, but we couldn't kill y'all because y'all these people that we know who y'all are, and we can't really kill y'all But the goal is to deal wisely with you, to make you self-destruct. I can't kill you, but I'll make you kill yourself. So I put images in front of you constantly your whole life. From the conception of TV and radio, I have belittled you as minstrels, coons, and buffoons. I have taught you against who you really are. I've taught you against your real nature, the real nature of a black man. I've always made your women seem dominant and you seem passive as a man. I've always exalted your women over you because I always understood I ain't scared of her, I'm scared of you as a black man. So the goal was to cause us to self-destruct by hating ourselves.
I am so sorry, black man. Please forgive me. I didn't know, I didn't know. I didn't realize how trapped you've been. I didn't realize how you've been targeted and hunted, set up, lied on. I didn't know. And I want you to know that I apologize. I privileged my pain over yours. I did that. And there's no real excuse, but there is an explanation, okay? As a black woman in North America, because that's where I live, I've been taught how to relate to you through white supremacy. And I never gave you the benefit of the doubt. I just took the images, the stuff that I heard my mama say, when wounded women were talking about you, and then I had bad experiences with black men. I painted you all the same way that the cops paint you. And I'm wrong for that.